Most people fail to value their history, and because they do not understand where they came from, they do not properly understand where they are, and they have no idea where they're going. For example, most people seem to think that European colonization ended after World War II. Take a good look at this map. This is a map of European and American colonies in 1945, at the end of World War II. And actually, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, New Guinea, South Africa, Jamaica, and a bunch of other islands, they were also all still part of the British Empire in 1945, and most of them, in fact, are still part of the British Empire today, and that is actually my point. They are all dominions under the crown of Queen Elizabeth to this day, except for South Africa, for obvious reasons if you know the history about that, and Jamaica, now, finally, in the 21st century, is also trying to free themselves from the monarchy. But for the rest of the British colonies shown in this picture, most of them are still part of the British Commonwealth, which serves as the modern remnant of the British Empire. It did not dissolve, it did not disappear. The Queen is walking around her palace right now as this video plays. It's not just Britain, though. Even France still has troops in Africa. France sells weapons to almost all of its former colonies. The ones in dark brown in this picture also have military alliances with France, so that if any other nation tries to tamper with France's sphere of influence, they'll have to fight France for it, just as if they were attacking a colony of the old French Empire. And actually, in this picture, Tanzania and Egypt were never part of the French Empire, so this shows that France has actually expanded its influence within Africa since the end of World War II. America still has its fingers in its old colony in the Philippines. We still have Puerto Rico and a base in Cuba left over from the Spanish-American War over 100 years ago, when we ripped the last colonies off of the first global empire in history. Hell, half of modern America was once claimed by Spain. So, you know, it just shows the common history. But let's go back to the American Empire. Some people don't want to call it an empire, because none of the countries within our sphere of influence are called colonies. To most people, it is just, you know, basing rights for our troops, or military alliances, economic partnerships, or we just have a few troops stationed at strategic points around the globe. But how is that not an empire? It's just semantics. Or, even more accurately, it's just ignorance. Because, even in the 1800s, not all of the British Empire was classified as colonies. Just because you call it something else doesn't mean it's not part of your empire. We consider everything in this picture to have once been part of the British Empire. But think about it on a deeper level. Take a closer look at this map. Egypt was a military protectorate, as were all portions of this map that are colored purple. The modern equivalent to that would be, you know, like military basing rights and a military alliance. That'd be kind of like a protectorate. But Egypt was considered part of the British Empire. No one disputes that. But we don't call Kazakhstan part of the American Empire. No. And as for the other parts of this map, the dark red in Afghanistan and America are places that were owned by the British but then lost. The orange areas are dominions, which are core territories of the British Empire, somewhat akin to the American states. And it would only be the pink portions of this map in Africa and India that were considered colonial territories. And technically speaking, the pink areas in this map in Iraq and Palestine were not colonies, but mandates from the League of Nations, which shows you the gradual development from the old imperial system to the modern, neo-imperial, international system. We see this more and more these days. The American influence in South Korea started with a UN mandate. The second invasion of Iraq was justified under UN resolution. So it's all just semantics. The things just change their name. We don't call it an empire anymore. It's just, I guess, a sphere of influence. We don't call it the League of Nations mandating things anymore. It's the United Nations mandating things. It's semantics. It's worth wondering, why do we look at a map of the American military presence around the world right now, and then we look at a map of the British military presence around the world in the 1800s, and we call one an empire, but the other is not? And why was it called an empire in the 1800s, but the British Commonwealth today is not called an empire? Why was it called an empire? Why was it called the French Empire in the 1800s, but today the French military presence in Africa is not imperial? What is the difference? And an even more powerful thing to consider, if all the former colonial powers were defeated and or occupied by American forces at the end of World War II, and then solidified into the European Union, NATO, NAFTA, ANZUS, and if these countries share resources and intelligence data with each other, and they go to war together, pledging to send their sons to die for each other's nations, then is this not one single political union? Would the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, would that have been considered a Euro-American empire if it had existed in the 19th century? I think it is clear that it would have. It is only the guilt from the holocausts of World Wars I and II that we are too squeamish to call ourselves an empire. But does it really even matter what you call it? To quote Shakespeare, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet."